So we find that the disciples were actually saying, Lord, tell us, what are the prophetic markers? What are the signs we'll see in our journey toward the conclusion of the age? What will we see? How will we know where we are in our prophetic journey? And how will we know when we've crossed the line and we've really passed into the very, very last of the last days? And particularly, they said, what shall be the sign of the end of the world? The word end is the Greek word suntelios. This word suntelios does not mean the abolition of a thing, but rather it is the wrap-up of the thing, the culmination of a thing. The King James Version says the end of the world, but there's a problem with that because the world will never end. The world is going to be changed, but it will never end. This is actually the Greek word ionos. A better translation will be the end of the age. And this is the question which the disciples were asking Jesus. When exactly are these things going to take place? What? T. Lord, we want to know, in this private audience with you, tell us what other ears never hear. What exactly, concretely, explicitly will be the sign, the road marker that will alert to us that we are no longer traveling toward the end times, that we've actually passed the border, we've entered into the end of the age, the wrap-up of this age. And then as you continue reading in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus begins to enumerate many signs that we will see to alert us where we are in a prophetic journey toward the end. Many people say, and they're correct, that Israel is a major sign to tell us where we are in the end of the age. But Israel is just one of many signs. Jesus also says there'll be wars and rumors of wars. He also says that kingdom will rise against kingdom. That's a very interesting phrase in Greek because it describes political philosophies, warring political groups, trying to squash warring political groups. It really describes unethical behavior in the political realm. Does anybody think we might be seeing that today on a level like we've never seen before? Jesus gives explicit signs. But when he begins his list, he begins with a sign that is something most of us don't really hear about as the primary sign to alert us that we've entered the end of the age. Jesus says in verse 4, take heed. The word take heed is the Greek word blepeto, which means look, listen. The words are so strong that it was almost like Jesus was reaching out to grab hold of the collar of the disciples. He is shaking them to get their attention. He says, take heed, blepete, listen to me, perk up, hear what I'm about to tell you. And then he immediately says, take heed that no man what? Deceive you. Everybody say deceive. Well, in this particular verse, Jesus doesn't even use the normal word for deception. This is the Greek word planao. The word planao is a word that is used multiple times by Jesus and by the Apostle Paul, so we know exactly what this word planao means. And it was a word that was used in the intertestamental period between the Old Testament and the New Testament by the rabbis, so the usage of this word deceive is very well established. This word deceive, the Greek word planao, was specifically used to describe a person, a nation, a group of nations, or society as a whole that once walked on a very solid, well-known moral path. But now for some reason they have deviated from the path that is familiar to them. The path they have been upon is time-tested. It is trustworthy. They know it's safe to walk upon that path. But now this word deceive, the Greek word planeo, describes a person, a nation, nations, or society as a whole making the decision that we will depart from the route we have walked upon and we're going to go another direction. And this particular word deceive describes a person, a nation, nations, or society that has now veered from a path of moral uprightness, and they are literally teetering on the edge of a dangerous and treacherous cliff. And in fact, the same word was used to describe an animal that so completely lost its way that it was unable to find its way back home. So now the disciples said, Lord, tell us exactly, concretely, explicitly, what is the sign? What is the thing that we should be aware of more than anything else that will alert us that we have entered the very end of the age? And Jesus says, I'm going to tell you first, above all, up front, take heed, listen to me careful. When deception enters the human race, you will know that you're no longer passing toward the end, but you have passed the barrier, and now you have passed over into the very, very end of the age. Interesting that this word deceive is used by the Apostle Paul in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 11, where the King James translators properly translated it as the word delusion. It's talking about delusionary times. Delusionary times. It is the same word which is used by the Apostle Paul in 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 1, when he says that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits. That word seducing is the same Greek word, spirits of delusion. So when you compare the writings of Jesus with the writings of Paul, you find at the very end of the age, when we've crossed that barrier into the very end of the age, we will enter into a time when delusionary spirits have been released into society.